Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. and today I'm reviewing Dragons of Etchinstone by Joe Clifford. Dragons of Etchinstone is a sort of print and play production, not really print yourself. This is going to be a Game Crafter production. You can get this over on Game Crafter. There's a current sale on this. I'll have a link down below. Current is relative depending on when you're watching this video. But this is designed by Joe Clifford, the same guy who did Gloomholden, a hold in your hand kind of board game version of Gloomhaven. That is just a bunch of cards. But anyways, Dragons of Etchinstone. Let's go ahead and walk you through this. This is a game that's meant to be playable in your hand. Great for flights, great for cars, great for standing in line for the bus or anything like that. Yes, you could play it on a table, and it is slightly easier to play on a table, but you could go ahead and play it in your hand. With that said, let's go ahead and show you how it plays on a table, because of the fact that it'll just be easier to show you everything. And the game has an actual rulebook with a whole lot of content. The rulebook, by the way, is going to be print and play. It will not come with your game, but you can go ahead and print and play this rulebook, just simple sheet of paper and all that stuff. But then past that, we'll have this over here, which has a nice handy-dandy coverage of all the phases you're going to be going through. But in the game, you're going to be going ahead and having a dragon that you're facing off against. You're going to grab a dragon, picking one of the 4 possible dragons. Let's go ahead and face off against the blue dragon. We're going to grab the Jade Mountains as our initial journey. We're going to be going on a path through the Jade Mountains, then through the Living Marshes, then through the Burning Basin, and finally to the Forest of Goth, at which point we will confront the Blue Dragon. That's the sequence you're going to be going on in this game. From there, you're going to set all the cards. You're going to orient all the cards to 2. You have card levels of 1 over here, of 2 over here, 3 over there, and then 4 over here. All the cards have 4 levels to them. We're going to go ahead and have level 2 as the default starting thing. That means you actually have something to lose, and rest assured you will be losing in this game. Past that, you're going to be going on a sequence of encounters. You're going to be going on a sequence of encounters with a handy-dandy spreadsheet of, well, spreadsheet is a loose term, but a guiding system as far as what you're doing and how you're doing it over here. Let's go ahead and show you this. General idea is we're going to start off, we're going to grab 4 cards into our hand from the top of the deck. Let's actually just shuffle it first. Let's go through a quick shuffling. Just need to randomize all that up. Boom, there we go, there we go. Just quick shuffle, 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 shuffle. And then from there, we have our starting hand. And we have 1, 2, 3, 4 as our starting hand. We should have our scenario card a little bit out of our hand. Again, so you can see how you kind of could manage this all in one hand. It is easier with the table, but not essential with the table. We have our starting hand of cards over here, and we're going to be going through the cards, picking a leader card, a card that's going to buff it, and then a boost card as well. We're picking 3 different cards effectively for this. But for the sake of this example, generally having 2 cards of a color is generally a good thing, although it depends what we're doing. Because the first thing you're going to do is you're going to look at this card, and there's a lot of information to go over, but it all makes sense once you go through 1 or 2 encounters. This card says we're going on an adventure with a modifier for bad weather. I'm not going to get into the modifiers for the purpose of this overview, just so we can quickly get through the main points, but we're going to be going on Adventure 2. Adventure 2 is going to be the second adventure over here, so we're going on Adventure 2, which has a potential time loss of 1, and an adventure journey of 8, although we get a boost if we're using blue cards for this, but we probably won't be. In this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at my hand of cards and start making choices around my hand of cards. In this case, the choice that stands out to me the most is, because I know that I can boost my yellows, I can go ahead and grab this card. Now what that means is this is going to be the main card, and it's going to provide us with a journey value of 5. Journey value is going to be helpful for journeys, and then sometimes you're going to be facing off against monsters. So for example, if we see over here, that would tell us we're fighting Monster 1. We're not fighting Monster 1, we are fighting we're going on a journey path 2. That's one's over there. So we're using the journey values and not the sword values, and so the journey value over here, because this will give me a default 5 for the journey, but if I boost it with this card is going to make it 9. If I use the same color card, then I can use the enhanced value, which means I'll already have a value of 9, which is more than enough to hit that 8, which means I won't have to worry about anything. And I'll go ahead and I'll keep this blue card in my hand. We'll see why. I'll use this for my boost, which means I can add 3 either to the initiative value, which is relevant when fighting enemies, or alternatively to the journey value, making this a journey value of 12, which is well over the 8 over there. So great, congratulations, I've gone on the journey, and now what happens next is I'm going to go ahead and earn 3 experience points that I can use to boost cards. Cards will have an experience value, so I'm going to go ahead and discard these. I'm going to choose to boost this card that's in my hand. Boost value of 3, turn this to a level 3 card. I've now just leveled up one of the cards in the game. Awesome, great, I now have this card. And now we go to the next scenario where I'm going to restock my hand up to 4 cards, and I kept the blue card knowing I would have an additional blue coming my way, and now we're facing off against enemy 1. These are my discard off to the side. You can do any number of tips for that. If you want, you can store them sideways in your hand for the sake of holding everything. Again, you could play this all held in one hand. And over here we're going to go to the next scenario where I'm fighting against enemy 1, who has a strength value of 7. They have an initiative value of 8. They'll deal 1 damage to us, and they'll give us 4 points of experience. To that end, again, looking at my cards over here, I know that offhand, if I use this blue card to boost this card, then I'll have an initiative value of 5 and an attack value of 9. The attack value of 9 is higher than the enemy. The initiative value of 5 is unfortunately not enough to beat them, but this is where we can look at the other cards in our hand. We can see that unfortunately we can use one of these two modifiers to boost the initiative value, but it unfortunately won't be enough to actually take us as far as we want. Do we have anything else we can do? I don't think there's a way for us to beat the initiative and beat the enemy, so unfortunately they're going to get the first hit in, which means they're going to deal 1 damage to us, and we have to choose to degrade one of the cards in our hand. In this case, again, I'm going to hold the red card for next time, so I'm going to hold that. I'm going to do these as my values, so again, we have an attack of 9, an initiative of 5, we're going to boost the initiative to 7, it's still less than the 8, and so we're going to go ahead and have to degrade 1 damage into my hand. You'll see this is where we have a shield value. For 1 damage, I can just degrade any one shield, but example, on a shield value of this card can take 2 degrading before it consumes that shield value. Because it has a shield value of 2 damage would be able to degrade this card. But I want to keep this at the higher level, so I think I'm going to go ahead and grab this neutral card, and I'm going to degrade the neutral card down to a level 1, and then discard this, take out the monster, gain the 4 experience points, and again, we can choose how to use the 4 experience points. I think in this case, I'm going to try to up this to level 4 already, so I'm going to go ahead and flip this, spending the 4 experience points directly on that. You cannot upgrade, whoops, wrong way, go ahead and do this over here. You cannot upgrade a card you degraded, and then again, we'll keep our red card, and we're going to go through there. You're going to repeat the process going through these journeys until you eventually come to the end of your hand, at which point you'll go through that process, you'll have all your cards, making sure to keep the orientations, and then you'll go to the living marshes, then you'll go to the burning basin, then you'll go to the forest of Gath, and then eventually you'll face off against the dragon you chose, taking into account the various journey value and damage value that the dragon is going to provide, which are all significantly higher, but the game is going to give you a different way for handling that, but that is basically the Dragons of Etchinstone. You're going through a selection of encounters in your hand, using a bunch of values in your hand, trying to combine the values in whatever way helps you the most in order to go on a journey, in order to level up your hand, so that eventually when you face that dragon, you have as many level 3 and 4 cards as possible, because you will need as many level 3 and 4 cards as possible. You will need all the help you can possibly get in order to take down these baddies. And that is Dragons of Etchinstone. Which brings us to ease of play. Ease of play is good with the caveat that this is a fairly lengthy rulebook for an 18-card game. While the ease of play is not hard compared to a larger game, for an 18-card game, there's a lot of information going on here, and I will say, the amount of information you have on these cards is overwhelming. You're going to have a bunch of information, and they're all relevant to different things. This is primary value, this is its boosted value, this is its initiative, this is its boosted value to depending on the initiative or the strength of it. This is how you're going to level and upgrade. This is going to be the damage you can absorb. This is the enemy. We also have modifiers to the enemies. We have modifiers to the journeys. There's a lot of information to the cards that is just potentially overwhelming at first as you're trying to learn the game. So it's not a hard game to learn, but for 18 cards, it is comparatively speaking a hard game to learn. As far as game time, runs around half an hour, which is not long for a game, but might be long for a game that you're using to stand in line. The good news, it is very easy to save this game wherever you left off. It is very easy to pick this game, just go exactly where you left off, have the cards stacked, put them into your little fold away. As long as you're not picking it up in 3 weeks, you should be able to pick up exactly where you left off. It is a very easy game that almost has a built-in save system just because you just put the cards away. That's all it is. Keep the orientation, put the cards away, and you're good to go. As far as what I like, don't like, and can see others not liking, starting with what I like, which is the small portable size of the game. This is a game that's designed to be played in your hand, so understand this entire review is based on the fact that this game is already compromising it to a degree on what it can do by the very nature of what it's compromising on what it can't do by doing what it can do, which is being an 18 card in your hand experience. That means this game is easy to save, the game is very portable, the game is relatively affordable, the game has a ton of ways that you can do a lot with very few cards, all going to its size. You have this little puzzle of grabbing 4 cards, which cards are you going to upgrade, which journey are you going to go on. One thing we didn't really touch upon is there's the option to go another way. Sometimes you don't like the encounter you're facing off against, and so you can go another way. You can do that as much as you want, but your hand gets weaker every single time, so do you want to risk that? Do you just take the penalties? We haven't heavily gotten into exactly how it plays out when you have to take hits first, when you don't deal enough damage, when you're dealing above damage or halfway. There's all these different aspects we didn't really dive into, but there's a decent amount of strategic decision around what you try to do based on your hand size, based on the encounter you're going, and which cards you level up and how you try to build out your hand for that final encounter. There's a lot in 18 cards. The biggest thing that I like over here about this game is how much this game gives you in the 18 cards, how much of a journey and an experience and an upgrading it gives you while taking damage along the way, while dealing with all of that, all in 18 cards. As far as what I don't like about the game, first of all, it's mostly just a bunch of numbers. It's mostly a bunch of numbers. That's what the game is. The very nature of the game, it has all these cards over here with all the numbers in them, all their stats, and most of the time it comes down to looking at a card, looking at the journey you're facing off against, trying to weigh up, okay, we're facing off against that, and if I combine this and this and this, then we'll work that together and I'll bump this up. Mostly it's about looking at your hand, finding a bunch of numbers, and then finding the pairs or sets of numbers that work best for you. This is not a game where you thematically feel like you're wielding a sword and armor and shield. This is a game where you feel like you have a bunch of stats in front of you, and you're trying to pair up those stats in the way that works best for you. This is a number-driven game. It's mostly an abstracted math puzzle, or not even a math puzzle so much as just finding the right numbers that work together. Secondly, going back to that ease of play aspect, lots of small stuff to remember. It took me a play or two in before I was getting to the point where I didn't have to look up what every single modifier does. There's lots of modifiers on the enemies, on the weather, on the different things you're going through, and there's so many different small edge cases for a very small condensed game of, well, this is what happens if you have this happens if you have this, if you're doing this, you use the unused boost card, if you're doing this, then you have to take into account that. Lots of small things, a lot there for a game that's this small, and again, it takes multiple plays before I wasn't checking the rules anymore for that stuff. Although again, they have a nice handy player and all that stuff, but yeah, there's a lot going on for a game with only 18 cards. As far as I can see others not liking, first of all, sometimes you just draw a dead hand. A dead hand is not a dead hand, but a dead hand means when you draw 4 cards and there's no synergies between the cards, and therefore you can't boost the lower value of the other card, and you're trying to face off against an enemy, going another way won't help. You don't draw a new hand, you're just kind of stuck with what it is, and you take the hit that you need to take. Drawing a hand with no synergies is often just not that satisfying in the experience, and that doesn't happen that often, fortunately. Statistically, the odds are against you having no synergies at all, but it certainly can be a drop frustrating. Now, you could mitigate around that a bit by holding the right card over to the next hand, seeing what the top card is. Again, it doesn't happen that frequently, but I'd say it usually happens at least once or twice per game, and every time it happens in that once or twice per game, it is not particularly a fun experience. As far as final thoughts on Dragons of Etchinstone, this is a fun one, but a fun one with the caveat that it's hard to grade a game where it's inherently trying to do a lot with very little. This game for me is a 3.5 out of 5. I like the experience, I enjoy the puzzle, and I think it's incredibly compelling what they do with 18 cards in terms of the game design and the choices you're able to make and the feelings of journey and tableau building and leveling up. All of what they do with 18 cards is incredibly impressive. At the same time, it is a game where most of the time it comes down to pulling a hand of cards, looking at the choices in front of me. More often than not, if you do have 2 cards of the same color, you're going to be pairing those up more often than not always, and then just trying to make the choice based on the numbers you see. While incredibly impressive with the game design and incredibly impressive in terms of what you get and what you're able to do for a game that is holding in your hand and that is it still does cap out as a game that feels like a number-based experience, a game of looking at cards and picking the numeric combinations that work for you. I enjoy the game, but I enjoy it more with the caveat of what it manages to do with so little, as opposed to thinking that it is amazing and incredible in its own right. It's amazing and incredible because of what you're able to do with 18 cards while holding your hand, as far as being a handheld, travel-friendly, very affordable game that you can get your hands on. So yeah, a 3.5 out of 5, an enjoyable experience, Dragons of Etchinstone. As far as other game recommendations, first of all, Palm Island. If you're looking for other games that you can hold in your hand and go ahead and go through a little bit of a tableau puzzle in your hand, but this one more focused on resource production. Palm Island is another game that does the same little trick. Different deck of cards, more cards, but holding a bunch of cards in your hand and trying to level them up slowly but surely. And then Gloomholden, which sadly I have not dived into just yet, but Gloomholden will also give you a fantastic experience, well, supposedly fantastic experience, as far as a handheld game that you can go through. In any case, and until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. I'll have a link to the Game Crafter down below, and until next time, I hope you have a good one.